Okay, let's move forward now to the focus of today's call, which is, of course, our final session of the Building the OHDSI Evidence Network. We have had, certainly over our 3 sessions, an introduction to the OHDSI Evidence Network and a planned network study that we kind of implemented on semaglutide to kind of show the impact that our OHDSI Evidence Network can have on a real world case as quickly as possible. So that is ongoing. We had sessions with technical descriptions about how to get involved and how it can impact, a session on vocabularies. And as much as we wish that everything was easy and simple and everybody understood everything on the first try, obviously that is not a reality. So we kind of wanted to create a session that was an open forum, take some of the questions that we have received, or that Claire has received and some members of her team, and try to answer them as best we can, because clearly if some people are asking them, others will as well. And then open it up to everybody else to have other questions that they have that they want to ask. So just to kind of get it started, Claire shared a few questions that are really pretty common. So I just wanted to, I'm going to feed them to her and let her talk about them. So one that she's received are just, what are some examples of network studies completed previously? So Claire, do you want to just talk about that?
Yeah, so what I have been really excited about in this effort is that I've actually been able to meet with and interact with people who are actually relatively new to the community. We know, I think, that the OMOP Common Data Model, it transcends the bounds of our community, and that's actually been really exciting for me because I get to meet new folks who aren't exactly aware of network studies, and that the fact that the OMOP CDM is such a such a foundation for the work that we do. So I find it interesting that we've been getting this question, but I think it's a great one. So I have a couple, I'm going to say some of my favorite network studies. I think I would be remiss if I did not share the one that currently holds the record for the highest number of data partners. So this was Erica Voss's paper, contextualizing adverse events of special interest to characterize the baseline incidence rates in 24 million patients with COVID-19. So again, this had 26 data partners. I think this is a really great example of a network study and what we can learn together when we all can contribute evidence towards one goal. So I'm really, really excited about this one. I also really love Jamie Weaver's paper on the risk of hydroxychloroquine in combination with azithromycin in the treatment of rheumatoid arthritis. This is one of the other ones. I think that was a very, very exciting study for our community. And I just love that Jenny Lane, who is a hand surgeon now at Barts, is one of the first authors. I think it just shows you, how much our work really is ubiquitous across the medical field, but you don't have to be an informatician. You can really come from any, any area of the community and lead a large study like this. And this is what we're really trying to do, is come together to support our community, to support our community members, to really generate the best evidence we can. And the way we're going to do that is by generating evidence across our global network. And then the last one I always really love as well is the Legend Hypertension study. And I'm very excited for our plenary sessions this year at the OHDSI Symposium, where we're going to see the, I'm going to say the sequel to the Legend Hypertension study, where we're going to learn about all of the great work that has been done in Legend Diabetes. So those are the 3 of my favorites, but as you saw Craig speak already, every week we are seeing new studies come forward, some network studies, some not, but I'm really hoping that as we begin and as we continue to build the OHDSI Evidence Network, we'll see more and more of those studies be network studies where we're bringing together data partners and collaborators from around the world.
So I'll just chime in to also add the ongoing study that we raised on the first one of these evidence network meetings, this opportunity to study semaglutide and NAION. This work that's being led out of our Vision and Eye Care work group under Cindy Kai. We actually have 13 data partners who have joined the journey on that and have already contributed results in a very short period of time. And that is work that we're hoping that finish up summarizing those results and publishing very shortly. So it's that's a really nice example of how a question can emerge and results can be generated very quickly if we have this evidence network in place.
Thank you. Another question. This is, I know, one that gets asked a lot. How do I get IRB approval to participate?
Yeah, so that is another really good question. And it is one that we have actually tried to answer much better this year. Oh, fantastic. I see Elizabeth and Sam are here today to share your experience at Health Partners. So that's really exciting. So I'd like to answer a couple of these questions, and then Craig, if it's okay with you, I'd love to hand it over to Elizabeth and Sam because they sent us some really, really in-depth questions. And it's very clear that Health Partners is really doing their due diligence, and I'd love for them to share their experience getting approval through their organization. So that's really wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Sam. I think for this study in particular, what we have wanted to do is give some examples of how you might get IRB approval or similar governance approval through your organization. Of course, because we are initiating this as a federated network, all of your data will stay behind your firewall, and we are not asking you to send us any person level data at all. We are requesting you send us some aggregate level information about your database, but we do not want person level data. If you send it to us, we will send it back and say, please don't give this to us, because we really just want to learn from the metadata about your database to really help us understand the types of studies your database or data source might be most appropriate to participate in. And I see Ben did just add some documents here. So that is exactly where I wanted to go. Thank you, Ben. Between our last community call about the OHDSI Evidence Network and now, we have initiated and we've created an OHDSI Studies GitHub specifically for this work as a repository for some documentation. So Ben very helpfully put up the IRB example from Johns Hopkins with some very helpful language and ways that you might fill out your IRB application, which is really great. Of course, every IRB and governance approval process might be a little bit different, so it will depend on your institution, your organization, and what is required. But we did provide some language here to help you with that. So we're also available every Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern for office hours. And if you have questions about how to answer certain questions in your IRB or governance application, we are always willing to help and try to guide you in the right direction as best we can. Because of course you will be more the expert in your own institution than we are, but we are always here to help.
Great. Let's go through our other two. I know you received this one and thought it was useful. Is there a deadline to join this initiative? People were asking, it would be great to get clarity about timeline.
Yeah, this is a really good one. I realized that we really hadn't put a deadline on things because we were not exactly sure what kind of uptake we would receive, how this was going to go, how this was going to land with the community. But what I've been hopeful for, and the deadline I've put out, is if you can let me or someone in the community like Paul Naji or Patrick or Craig, or if you want to email evidencenetwork@odyssey.org. I'm going to drop that in the chat if I can spell it correctly. What I would like is if you can send in a note to me by the end of August that you intend to participate. That would be ideal. You don't have to have governance approval yet. You don't need to have your data profile or your metadata sent to us yet. I just want to know that you plan to join. The reason being is that way I know that I should be reaching out to you, that I should follow up with you, offer you support, make sure, you have everything you need. So by the end of August, August 31st, right? 30 days has September, April, June, and November. So August 31st is the last day of August. I always have to run through it. I don't know if you guys do. So let me know by August 31st that you intend to participate. And then, I will follow up, or someone in the Evidence Network leadership team will follow up with you to make sure you have what you need.
Great. Thank you, Claire. And to confirm, I just said the same rhyme 15 minutes before the call to make sure when the last call in September was. So I'm glad I'm not alone in that.
Yeah, for sure. I never remember.
All right, one more. Is there an expectation to submit updated DB diagnostic results on a regular basis? So you want to just talk a little bit about this process?
Yeah. So our kind of tentative idea here, and a lot of this is a very new initiative. I think I keep thinking of it as we're trying something very new. There are other federated networks out there. We are not the first to initiate a federated network, but I think we are the first to initiate a completely community-based federated network. And it is really, I know we're asking for some things from you guys, but we're hoping that with a little bit of effort on your side, you will get a whole lot back for joining this. And it's kind of a new way of working. But my thought originally has been, we would ask for updated metadata, DB diagnostic information every year. So we're not going to be bothering you every quarter, even every 6 months. We're thinking about every year, if you are a member of the OHDSI Evidence Network, we'll reach out to you and ask you for some updated information about your data. And that's this term DB diagnostic results. It's just that those metadata counts we're asking you for. So we're thinking every year. And then to the question about a QA process, yes, there is a QA process. Likely what we're looking at is just very high level things. So when you send your metadata concept counts to us, we will have some very small things we look for. There might be, maybe odd dates or something. So we will communicate with you anything we find. It will be up to you at that point if you would like to fix any potential issues and rerun. But we're kind of working through that as we get more of these data diagnostic results in. So there is a QA process. We're not going to require you to do anything, obviously, because this is an open community effort, but we will be communicating with you anything that we find, and then it will be up to you.
Great, thank you. All right, so those are the questions that we kind of just wanted to get the ball rolling. I think because Sam actually has slides prepared. Let's turn it over, and then let's go to questions after that. We should have plenty of time for questions. But Sam, I'm going to stop sharing. Feel free to introduce yourself to the community and and share about your experience.
Thank you. I'm gonna get my slides up here, hopefully. Let me know if they're all
looking good,
showing up
Sam.
for you. Okay,
Perfect.
thanks. Hey all, my name is Sam Patnoe. I'm an informatics programmer analyst at HealthPartners. Today I'm just going to walk through a little bit of our approach to joining the OHDSI Evidence Network at HealthPartners, and I'll share some of the questions. Some of them are repeats from what Claire just went through, but I'll just share some of those questions we had along the way in case it's helpful to anyone else in a similar position. So first, I'll just give you a brief background on HealthPartners. We're a large integrated health system based in Minnesota, providing care to over 1.3 million patients across the upper Midwest. We also provide medical and dental health plans with more than 1.8 million members nationwide. For the past several years, we've been involved in OMOP projects at the state level as one of the leading sites for the Minnesota EHR Consortium, which is kind of like a mini evidence network of health systems in Minnesota that have adopted OMOP. And we're also involved in OMOP projects at the national level with projects like All of Us and the Helix My Genetics project, but we have not participated in an evidence network study yet. We were motivated to join the OHDSI Evidence Network because part of our mission at HealthPartners is improving health and well-being in partnership with community. And we were excited by this opportunity to be a partner in this worldwide community that can generate evidence that will lead to better care. We have a slogan here at HealthPartners of being a partner for good. And to us, this opportunity just seemed like a really great one to be a global partner for good. Now I'm going to just walk through a couple of the planning steps that we did to prepare for joining the Evidence Network. And this is not meant to be prescriptive at all. This is just explaining our experience at HealthPartners in case it's helpful to others. But we treated this like we would the start of our other projects. So we needed initial buy-in from senior leadership and then financial support to cover project setup. We needed project staff, including a project manager, a principal investigator, and a programmer analyst to run the R packages. We had to consider budget and effort estimates, making sure any time spent on Evidence Network projects could be covered. And then we went through our internal IRB review process and submitted a research determination form and protocol to our local IRB. But the determination was that no local IRB oversight was needed because it was not human research subjects, since it's just aggregate data. We had a question on data use agreements that I'll share in some of the next slides. But because this is dealing only with summary counts, no data use agreements were required at our site. And then, we needed a lot of answers to questions that came up along the way. I'll share those next. And then finally, just to run that DB Diagnostics R package and submit the results, which we have not yet completed, but I hope to get that done shortly. So next, I'm just going to walk through some of the questions. I know a lot of these are repeat what you just went through, Claire, but I have the answers that you provided so kindly in writing in case it's useful to other folks on the call. And just, again, huge thanks to Claire and the OHDSI team for being so responsive and helpful with all of our questions while we were going through this process. The deadline, I think that first question, deadline on joining the network was already answered, but make sure you share your intent by the end of August. I'll just reiterate that point. The time commitment for a network study, this was one of our considerations as we were trying to budget out efforting for what this project and what the commitment would entail. And I thought it was helpful. We got the reiteration that there's never an obligation to participate in studies as a data partner organization. The time commitment is dependent on the complexity of the study and can vary based on how involved you are. So if you're just a data node, it might only be a few hours to run a study package and return the results. But if you're more involved in leading a project, it would obviously be more time intensive with all the planning, protocol, and study package development. This question on data use agreements, this is up to the site. There were no formal agreements between OHDSI and the data partner organizations, since no person level data is being shared. We also found that a data use agreement was not necessary or required at our site. And then a couple of additional questions we had, and I think these were also reflected already. This first one for sure, how often will we have to run the DB diagnostics results? And again, it's just likely to be an annual thing for now. And then the QA checks that are done will be communicated, but it's up to each site to rerun and resend if there's anything that comes up on there. And then we had a question on funding and financial incentives as well. And the answer to that is that there will be some funding, but it's dependent on the study or sponsor, and that OHDSI as a group does not offer funding, but many studies are funded as part of a grant. So yeah, I have those questions and answers there. I think this is being recorded, so you all will have them now too. But just thank you for giving us the time to share our experience this morning.
Sam,
Thank you very much, Sam.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I was hoping if you have a quick moment, one of the other questions we get quite frequently is how do I sell OHDSI and being a member of the network up the chain? Like, how do I sell this to my senior leaders? Can you maybe give a couple comments on your experience there?
Yeah, and Claire, sorry, Liz and Patty, feel free to chime in if I miss anything. But I think for us, it was a pretty easy sell. We've been doing these OMOP projects, like I mentioned, with All of Us and Helix. And internally within the state of Minnesota, we've been doing a lot of OMOP projects on our Minnesota EHR consortium. So I think we've been able to do some really cool projects with that, looking at COVID rates, and now we're looking at chronic conditions. And I think just the opportunity to do some really cool cutting edge near real-time studies, looking at demographics and having denominators that you wouldn't otherwise be able to produce on your own as a site. It just seems like we're just kind of hitting the tip of the iceberg with what's possible in terms of creating evidence and doing some really cool studies. So I think they saw the success that we've had with our OMOP in the Minnesota EHR Consortium. And I'm speaking for senior leadership here, so correct me if I'm wrong, Patty or Liz. But I think they saw what could be done at the state level. And when we explained that this is a whole global network, much bigger than just Minnesota or the upper Midwest. So think about the potential times, 10, more than times 10. But you know what I'm saying? So I think the excitement around really this unique position we have to be part of a global network was the real selling point.
Sam, this is Patty speaking. Patty Mabry, also at HealthPartners. So Sam, I think you deserve the credit because I can tell you I tried several times before you tried to sell it. And I tried to sell it a few years ago. And I think I was told subsequently when it was successful this time that it was because the time is right now. And so part of it, I think, honestly, was the experience that you just reiterated about the Minnesota EHR Consortium and the other OMOP, collaborative experiences our organization has had. But I think back when I started asking about it, there was still the feeling of data is proprietary and this is our strength. And we need to, hoard the data because that's what sets us apart from others. So I think there's been, a flip in the mindset that collaboration can still keep the data private, but can be an advantage. But I think also it's probably an awareness that it isn't just, we are going to be swept, taken away by this wave, or we can get on our surfboard and go with it. You know what I mean? Like, the wave is here, and the wave I'm talking about is AI and this type of collaboration. So we can either get on board or get out of the way, And so I think we've recognized we have to get on board. But for me, the reason I was always excited early on, and I had a very nice conversation with Paul Nagy probably at least 2 years ago now, where I was trying to get us involved in this. And I'm so glad, Sam, that you came forward and got us back in or in. But for me, it's about AI has the ability to answer research questions that we can't answer with randomized controlled trials. You just can't. So you need, to do AI. AI is a different approach, completely different. And to do that approach, you're going to be addressing complex questions. And for me, I have a lot of interest in the ones that go over a long period of time, so longitudinal data about the same people. And to get to those questions and use that kind of methodology, which is so strong, you need big data, and big data is bigger than just our healthcare system's millions of records. That's just not enough. So you need more, and the only way to get more is to collaborate. So I'm delighted to be part of this, and I have some research ideas of my own, but what I'd like to do is first, collaborate with others and kind of see how it's done. And then we can bring on some other very exciting research ideas, I think. And so I'm thrilled that we're at the table. And thank you, Sam, for bringing us here, and Claire and all the others for making it possible.
I would echo certainly what everybody said, but thank you so much to Sam and Patty and Elizabeth for your leadership in getting Health Partners as part of the Evidence Network, but also joining this call and sharing about your experience and hopefully inspiring others to do the same. Sam, if you don't mind emailing me your slides, I just threw that in the chat. I can post them to the community calls page so people can really specifically read the answers to those questions. But it is great. And Patty, you used the word collaboration. I mean, we talk about the word all the time, but it really does take a global village to provide the kind of evidence needed to make a difference. And that's what we're working towards. So thank you for, as we say, joining the journey.
Thank you.
Honestly,
yeah, I'll email you those slides, Craig.
Yeah, but to the right email address, because clearly
I'll do both to be safe.
Too many emails. OHDSI.org. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. I want to open it up to questions. I already saw Christian's hand up, so let's just turn it over to people. I will call on questions as they come up. So Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. And thanks, Craig and Sam. Claire, I'm maybe behind because I wasn't in some of the previous of these due to the summer. Is it clear to people the step-by-step what actually it takes to participate in the study and or to initiate a study? Is that somewhere that you can that's actually clear what it takes and what they have to do and what's going to come down? You probably said that, but
no, you that is a very good question. So I think I think similar to your question is also, I think there's been some confusion about why are we talking about a network study and then also the OHDSI Evidence Network. And so number one, I would say we've built this protocol and are planning a network study as a way to build this resource for the community to connect people who have questions with people who have data. And I think Patty laid it out very nicely just now. So one of the reasons we are doing this in the form of a network study is to facilitate IRB and governance approval. luckily, as Sam, just shared about Health Partners, is they didn't have to get IRB approval because there is no person level data being shared. However, that's not true for every institution. So we knew in wanting to build this evidence network and move this initiative forward, we needed some way for sites to get governance or IRB approval. Thank you very much for those that recording. But the way to join is pretty easy. So if you want to join the network study, then I have instructions in that video. I can also share, again, the link to the GitHub. And this GitHub has all documents as well, including the protocol and including the IRB documentation, as well as information on the participation guidelines for sites. I've heard from a few folks that the participation guidelines have been very helpful in clarifying some questions as well. But the idea is we are initiating this study to help us build the OHDSI Evidence Network, but the Evidence Network will live beyond this one network study. We're just using it as the catalyst to kind of create that foundation. But all information, like Patrick's shared, is in that video, as well as I have all details on that GitHub site. But really, bare bones, what you need to do to join the OHDSI Evidence Network is to share with the OHDSI Coordinating Center your metadata concept counts, really by running your data diagnostic profile.
Thank you. Let's go to Devera.
Oh, thanks. This is kind of related to your last comments, but in section 8 of the protocol, there's a paper referenced. Is that going to be written up and submitted for publication?
Yes, the goal. So yes, like the goal of the network study is, like I was saying, to build this resource to connect people with questions to data partners with data. But at the end of the day, we will also be writing a publication. Back to the question about timelines, I am requesting that people just send us their intent to join by the end of August, so we know kind of who we can count on to join the network. And at some point, once we have a good understanding of kind of that first bolus of data partners, we will move forward in writing that paper. So there will be an initial publication describing the OHDSI Evidence Network, and every data partner will have the opportunity to be a co-author on that paper. But the publication of that paper will not be the end of the OHDSI Evidence Network. It is only the beginning. We plan to continue to offer data partners to join, and we expect there will be many, many publications, not only about the Evidence Network, but relying on the Evidence Network to generate evidence. So thank you for that, Devera.
Yeah, thank you, Devera. Jack.
Hello. So I guess my question is focused on what you just said about people registering their intent to join. How much OHDSI experience working with the tools and in the ecosystem is recommended before you try and join in with these network studies? How much would you expect people to have explored the environment first?
Great question. So starting from the joining the network, you really need, hopefully, little interaction with the tools. Really what you need is an OMOP CDM instance built on version 5.3 or 5.4 of the OMOP CDM, and you need a way to interact with that with your data source through R. As Mark said, we did try to build out the data diagnostic package to make it as easy as possible for you to run, even if you have very little experience with the tools, because the hope is that even if you're a newer data partner, maybe you just finished your ETL, you do not need to be an expert to join the OHDSI Evidence Network. This is a very academic environment, as we hope we've conveyed here, and we are here to help, to mentor, to guide. And we have folks who are very experienced in running network studies that are able to help you on your way. So you need very little experience, though expect that if you have little experience, your first network study might have a few bumps, but we are certainly here to help.
Great question, Jack. Mark, go ahead.
Claire, you've done tremendous work bringing this community together behind an evidence network. Evidence networks can play many different roles, especially since we have a very large community. I'm particularly interested in academic research, and kind of the funding models for academic research is fairly well laid out. It generally comes from extramural funding and how that interacts and kind of supports network studies. We've demonstrated well with Legend and bringing people together to do that. But there are many other people in the community that kind of work on different models. We have a number of industry-focused questions, for example. We have data providers. And question I get, at least from Legend, is sort of what are different funding models that we've been thinking about for many different use cases. Sorry, that was a long introduction. You touched upon this briefly with Sam in terms of different funding ideas, but could you kind of elaborate on what are some of the different ideas that the community is exploring for industry, data providers, and academics?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually going to ask Mui to help answer this question, because Mui has been leading the industry working group where they have been really talking about these potential funding options, specifically commercial funding options. So, Mui, I don't see your face, but I think you are here.
I'm here.
Okay, good. Oh, there you are. Okay, you're on my second page.
I see myself, I think.
Yes, you're good.
So as part of the industry working group, we've been talking a lot about how to work with the OHDSI Evidence Network to better understand what type of, organizations are available for sponsored studies, right? And when I say sponsored studies, they can be a range of different type of studies. It could be some of the ones that you guys are used to, which is more on the safety and the effectiveness of, the drug, all the way to cost, right? Health economic, all the way back to the beginning of drug development, where we're inside clinical trials or inside trying to understand, what are those things called? FDA regulatory submissions, right? So we can go the whole span of it, of type of use cases where we feel that the OHDSI community, because you guys are centers that have data, right, that have patients that actually goes to see you guys, that it would be great to be able to collaborate on different type of sponsored related studies. So again, I believe in the protocol, there is a checkbox, right, that says, hey, are you interested in sponsored studies? And my ask is, if the community, for those that are joining the network, if that is an interest of yours, check that, because if you're not, we're not going to bug you. Okay, so we understand folks may not want to be bugged with that, but if you are, it gives us an opportunity in the industry working group to understand who you guys are and figure out how to work through a program to interact with you guys, to ask you to participate in sponsor studies where they come available. So, yeah. Does that answer your question, Mark?
That was very helpful. Thank you, Millie.
You're welcome.
Can I do a quick follow-up question?
Of course.
Interest in both academic and sponsored studies kind of changes over time, and that information was kind of collected once. What are sort of update ideas in terms of different levels of engagement and who contact people should be? How do we keep track of what a data provider's current options are and how to change them?
So That's a good question. It's not one that I have a great answer to as of yet. But as we described, data partners will have the opportunity to update at least their metadata, their data diagnostic profiles every year. And with that update, you do have the option to change some of those answers related to yes, I am or I'm not interested in sponsored studies. One of my goals of the OHDSI Evidence Network, and we'll see how this goes as this evolves, but one of my goals is actually to keep track of those studies that did actually have funding behind it, whether it is grant funding or if it's industry sponsored or sponsored by some other commercial entity. Keeping track of that information, I think, will really help us understand better return on investment for data partners. So that is my goal as we begin to ramp up on studies to keep track of those things. But to the meat of your question, I think at least every year partners will have the opportunity to update that information, and they can update it at any time, based on the change in their circumstance, really.
Great, thank you. Excuse me, thank you, Mark and Millie. Andrew.
So, Mark, to your point, Marty Alvarez, every single week for months and months and months, has been sending in grant opportunities. They are available to the entire community. She filters all of these different grant opportunity announcements throughout a bunch of places and finds ones that are relevant for OHDSI and submits them, and they are available through the dashboard. I'm going to put the link to the dashboard in there. So it's a very underutilized resource. Marty puts in a lot of great work for it. It's really an answer to the academic part of your question, or at least a partial answer to it. So please go there, look under funding tab, find the things that Marty is contributing each week, go use that funding, get it to generate evidence. That's part one. Part two of my response or comment, I guess, is relative to what you were saying, Christian. I think you were asking mostly about users of the evidence network once it's established. And I think where Claire and everybody is at the phase of building the network so that it can be used by users. So a lot of the effort and announcements are about how to participate as a data contributor. And the exact way in which people are going to be using it once it's stood up, once this first phase has gotten completed, is still being developed. One of the things we're going to be doing in the tutorial at the symposium is how to do a network study. It's going to have links to the evidence network. It's going to kind of be a place where the current thinking about that is reflected and an opportunity to help define what that looks like for the community. It's an open effort, as everything is. So it's a little bit of a plug for that session at the symposium and a response. I think that Claire, if I'm not mistaken, we're kind of not putting the cart before the horse. Let's build a platform, and then once there's a sufficient participation in it, focus more on how users of the platform get their work done. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Andrew. I was actually going to point to both you and Paul Nagy as I think some of the best resources for understanding potential grant funding. So thank you for that community dashboard. And then yes, I 100% agree. I have as I'm saying, I have an idea of how the network will work as researchers come and ask their questions. I do have a plan for the most part, but I do agree. I think you and others in that tutorial have a much better idea of what it takes to run a network study. And what we'd like to do is add the OHDSI Evidence Network in at the beginning of that process to say, hey, let's help identify those data sources in the network that are most appropriate to answer this question, which I think will hopefully drive down the time it takes to generate evidence, but also increase the number of data sources we have participating in any study.
We're almost at the top of the hour. So on behalf of the entire community, I want to thank Claire for her incredible leadership on this entire initiative and the CDM work group. What they're trying to do is really groundbreaking stuff and really critical for the community. I want to thank, and I hope I don't miss anyone, Patrick, Paul, Anna, Sam today. everybody who has joined and taken part in these OHDSI Evidence Network Sprint build-up sessions. Really, I think we've provided a lot of information, answered a lot of questions. More questions will come. Obviously, there's more information to be put together on the community side. We will have an OHDSI Evidence Network webpage, I think, when we have a little more clear information. But Claire, just if people have questions, you just put the email in. Is the email the best way to go?
Yes. Yeah, evidencenetwork@ohdsi.org is hopefully the easiest thing to remember. But yeah, if you email that, one of us on the leadership team will get back to you as soon as we can. But yep. And I will be reaching out to individuals as I know who you are. But there are many, many more who I have yet to meet, and I'm excited to do so. So please reach out there.